We're here to play cozy cat games and complain about capitalism. That seems pretty on brand, actually. What a nice day. A perfect day for my new assignment. Meow, meow, meow. The sun is a meow, meow. Uh-oh. This is really, really visually beautiful. Look how limited the palette is. Vivian Spiral said, when a large proportion of the population is living paycheck to paycheck, the dream of making that much wealth is definitely going to have a high draw. Yeah, I agree with that, and I understand. The audience size for stuff about people making money is bigger than the audience size for stuff about people talking about craft or how to make something well. You know, the audience size for a channel like mine, where I tell people to do better at something, is always going to be smaller than the audience size for sort of a inspiration porn channel about how everyone can do something. And everyone can do something, but it's a hobby. You do it as a hobby first. You build your skills up doing it as a hobby. And then at some point you hit a point where you're like, oh, actually what I'm making here is as good as those things that are selling. Maybe I could make a go of it. I also think a lot of the people that are kind of falling into the audience space for that kind of game dev content aren't necessarily living paycheck to paycheck. I think it's like kids that, you know, just want kind of inspiration for why they're doing their hobby. I think there's like a culture of like people that maybe haven't come from a background where they've got lots of people around them that are artistic or craftspeople or something like that. And that's a privilege thing, right? Like kids from, like, I don't know, more middle-class backgrounds or kids who have people in their family who have worked in the arts are more likely to know that you just do the thing as a hobby, you do it for fun, and that's how you get your skills, and that's how maybe you eventually get a chance at doing something good. If you come from a background where no one is doing those sorts of things, you're much more likely to feel guilty about just spending like dozens of hours a week on the computer making something. So I think in order to rationalize it, you have to build up this idea of like what you're going to get out of it eventually. Games are like complicated multidisciplinary projects. You could start off making games and end up building websites or end up doing graphic design or some other skill. But the idea of going from a hobbyist to like releasing a commercially viable game in like a year or two when you've literally just started to learn is not reasonable, because for a game to be good, it requires all of these different skills that aren't just being able to use the game engine. It's a complicated problem, and part of the reason why this channel is structured the way it is I feel much more comfortable working with people who are already making games, already know the technical basics, and just saying, right, here's how to make this better in terms of game design, then interacting with people who sort of have a dream and haven't learned the basics yet, because I think the way that you interact with those people can often feel quite exploitative. And I'm not going to go into that in detail in terms of like talking about other content creators and stuff like that, but I do think a lot of the way that people interact with people who have not even touched a game engine yet and are just like following dreams, I do think that can be quite exploitative, and I don't really want to get involved with that. And that's the reason that this channel is the way that it is. I mean, another way to put it is that I got a job in a game studio when I was 28, like 10 years ago, but not super long ago. And up until that point, I never had any sort of illusions about making money out of just making my own game. I made my own games as a hobby project, and then I used those hobby projects to build a portfolio, and then I applied for jobs locally, and I got a job because I had a portfolio. I had a blog where I wrote about the games I made and stuff like that. The idea of my learning projects being something that I could sell was just not something that ever crossed my mind, because I just didn't think they were good enough. I think a lot of people just don't have a very good grasp on what's good and what's not, or they sort of give themselves too much leeway to make something a bit shoddy. I just can't relate to that sort of person because I've never been that sort of person. I was making games for fun, or like making levels for games or modding games, doing stuff like that for like 2 decades before I ever made any money from doing game stuff. And when I made money from doing game stuff, it was from being employed by someone else, not taking my own thing to market, you know? Yeah, it's like something you just do because you have to do it. And then if you're driven to do it because you have to do it and you enjoy doing it, then eventually you'll get better at it. I do think the people that just do the thing because they have to do it and they find it really fun and they're curious about learning the thing, they're the people that make the good stuff. Because they're not so hasty to just ship something shoddy. Some of the game dev conversations I hear are really not miles away from the sort of like Andrew Tate in a sauna with a cigar talking about his clients or whatever type stuff. LinkedIn Business Bro adjacent stuff that has nothing to do with creativity or making things that are fun for other people. If you look at the games industry as a whole, and you look at like the forces in the games industry that are perhaps making things like AAA games worse, making working conditions in AAA games worse. You know, there are people in positions of power in studios who aren't from game design backgrounds, they're from business backgrounds. They're all those kind of people. They're not the same kind of person I am. They're the sort of people that are the kind of the entrepreneurial thinkers. And they make studios worse because they want to operate everything off of data and not off of the kind of tastes and hunches of creative people that have been learning a craft for 20 or 30 years, you know? Ah, you're a new neighbor? Well, I'm sorry, but there's no city yet. Look at that. Look at that portrait. That's great. But I can make you a smoothie in the meantime. Lawyer in the chat said that's why we need universal basic income, so we can finally be free to do what we like. Yes, that is true. I'm going to cut this stream down and make a video that's like, let's play a cozy cat game and talk about capitalism. So sorry, you're all going to be in an edit with that theming, and we're going to get raided like hell by people that think they're millionaires in waiting. Look at that. Sign of the times, isn't it? It's like a Steinbeck novel. Will just said looks like a girl game. What in the frickin' kitty cat heavens do you mean by it looks like a girl game? It's just a cat. It's a cat in a low poly world. Guys, is it gay to like being a cat in a computer game? Men's reactions to cozy games sometimes remind me of those memes you see of like dudes' bedrooms where it's just a mattress on the floor and a TV and like some oddly built configuration of beer cans. I will have no creature comforts in my world or in my mind. So let's see. I'm going to build a little neighborhood up here because this is where I'd want to live, up here, overlooking this little valley. Maybe that house is going to struggle because of coastal erosion. We can have a nice sort of 10 years while it lasts, this neighborhood on the cliff. Now it's a manly game because you're building stuff. Yeah, this guy gets it. I've been playing Fallout 4 again recently because it is one of my comfort games, and I will defend to the death the idea that Fallout 4 is a cozy game. And there is nothing more emotionally affecting than spending like 10 hours building a settlement and then seeing your people mown down by raiders as they come into the settlement. Like, I think that the way that you get invested in a cozy game works very well when you pair it with horror or violence. One of the reasons I'm really excited for We Harvest Shadows, because I think the cozy parts in that game make the horror work very, very well from what I saw in the demo last year. Why isn't anyone coming? I truly have no idea. Of course, how can they land here without a lighthouse to guide them? We're gonna do the platforming and the city building together? Ah, yes. Yes, that's great. I put a house there, and then I use the house to get up. This is how you do genre mashup well. This is exactly how you execute on that idea. Because the core mechanics of both of those things are very, very tightly bound together in a way that absolutely makes sense. Occasionally when I get a game on like this on a stream, it's like I don't really have any criticism of this apart from that it's easy to forget what you're doing because we don't have a very clear next goal thing. I do have a Discord community, but it's only for cool people who give me money, because unfortunately that's how the internet works nowadays. The only way I could make enough money just from viewership on YouTube was if I was making content that was raving about EDI, complaining about how cozy games are destroying the world or something like that. I don't know. So instead I have to make nice content that is occasionally helpful to people and then ask people for money. And this man critiqued capitalism half an hour ago. We've got to make money somehow. It's operating to keep yourself alive within a capitalist system. This is very much like, ahaha. But don't you have an iPhone, don't you? That kind of logic. Ahaha, but do you not seek money in order to not die? I had someone call me corporate once for having a paid Discord. Do people know what words mean anymore? How can one individual owning a business of one person be corporate for asking people for money for a service? How does that work? The idea that people don't own anything under socialism is like Red Scare stuff. If you're from like a previously Soviet place, I can kind of understand that. But like when Americans talk about that, it's just Red Scare rhetoric. I mean, UK doesn't have a very strong form of socialism. So we have like VAT tax over here, right? Where every good sold has a 20% tax on it that's supposed to go to the government to help fund things like the welfare state and schools and hospitals. And the biggest corporations like Amazon and stuff like that, they just don't pay it. And because they're so big, because they're such a big deal in terms of like how much money they make, the government just don't really chase them and don't get them to pay it. You could say we have a form of socialism, but whether it's particularly functional or not is not because the idea behind it is bad. It's because the people operating it are not really abiding by the rules. If anyone in the UK ever says, oh, you know, this should be spent on schools and hospitals, yeah, it's like, well, every good that is bought in the UK has a tax on it that we already pay when we trade that good. Someone already pays that tax. The consumer already pays that tax. And then at the moment, a lot of it's being held by the owners of companies like Amazon. They just refuse to pay that VAT bill to the government and they get away with it. And no one dares to properly do anything about it. So if you think that that's like some of the biggest traders in the country, and 20% of the price of any good they sell is supposed to go towards funding like care for sick people or education for people or emergency services and stuff, and it doesn't, because Jeffrey Bezos needs more head polish.